Awesome. So, Joseph, you know who I am. Jeffrey, this is our first time meeting. At least as far as I know, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So I am Robin Hooper. I'm the Agent Services Coordinator at the Keller Williams in Kirkland. I've been in this role for about 2.5 years, doing test prep for about 2 years of that. So I've been around enough people going through school and helping them with that process that hopefully I can help you too. I got licensed in 2013 and I've been in the business since 2008. So it's definitely been a minute. Every now and then when you guys ask me questions that I haven't heard about in a while, I have to go back to the book because we do things a little bit differently in the business oftentimes than what you learn in the text. So if it takes me a second, I apologize, but I will find that answer for you. Excuse me. So we're just going to dive right into some study tips. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for a couple years, and so I start to see patterns of people who pass and people who don't, and I've been paying more attention to that. Excuse me. And I don't think that a lot of people know how to study. Like, we're never really taught that. I feel like, at least I wasn't. And I kind of just had to figure out what worked for me. And I'll talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, I just plan on taking the practice test over and over again until I get a good score. And that is their process for studying. And I would really strongly recommend against that. And so the reason for that is those practice tests that the school provides for you, either through the cram course or even in the back of some of the books. Those tests are really to gauge where you're at in the material, not a study tool. So your studying should prepare you for those practice exams. And then when you're getting about 85% on those, you are ready to test. You only need a 70 to pass the exam, but we recommend that 85 because the questions will be different. And then you have a little bit of that cushion for confidence. Gosh, I am so sorry. One second. Okay. So I pulled up some information from a college in North Carolina. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was whichever one is the Tar Heels. And they had written an article all about studying. I put a lot of the tips that I found on here, and I just wanted to point out a couple of them. Probably one of the best ones is using your time very wisely. You know, we all have something else that's going on in our lives. Maybe that's work, children, family, whatever. So all of our time is precious. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend sitting down to study for 3 hours. Instead, try to find 30 minutes that you can super hyper focus on one topic. I think that when studying, taking the time to focus on one thing and master that before moving on to studying the next topic will be super helpful in memorization. And not just reading through the information, but actively taking notes, writing things down. That does commit things to memory much better than just reading through them. It activates your brain in different ways. I do have a study guide that I'm going to give you so that it will help you moving through the material in an organized way so that you feel more in control of the time that you have and you're not like bouncing from topic to topic. Because if you study like that, you're probably not going to remember much of anything and you're not going to be able to connect to those dots because your dots are all over the place. So just trying to be super hyper focused. Plan your study efforts. If you are going to be able to commit 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, then you're like, okay, well, then this 30 minutes, I'm going to go through this topic. And then when you're done for the day, make sure that you know what you're going to study next time. So when you sit down, you're not like, what am I going to figure, what am I going to go through? You'll you'll have your plan in advance and just get right down to it and then get done and go do something fun. um, Something that I do, and we kind of encourage this a lot in real estate, is practice on yourself or someone else. If you're able to, well, by practice, what I mean is if I'm learning a new topic or how to do something, I'll almost pretend that I'm teaching a class on that. And if I can't explain it to someone else who knows nothing about it in a way that they walk away understanding, then maybe I don't completely understand it. So if you have a significant other, roommate, whoever lives with you, or just someone who will sit on the phone and kind of go through some of these more difficult topics with you, try explaining it to them. And if they don't get it, or you don't feel like you confidently explained it, maybe you need to spend a little more time on that one topic. Sorry, I need to cough 1 second. I'm trying to fall apart. I'm sorry. All right, so this is about what to expect once you are done with school. So as soon as you're done with both of the 60-hour and the 30-hour, as well as the test at the end, about 24 hours later, you're going to get an email from AMP PSI inviting you to schedule the exam. When you go to do that, you'll be able to pick whatever location you want to take it at. I have some of the more local ones listed there. They are back up to, I think, 50% capacity or whatever we're at now for COVID. So it is getting a bit easier to get a testing date sooner. And then when you go to register for the test, there is a fee of $138.25. You're going to pay that at the time of scheduling. And then once you're done with school, you have 2 years to pass your test. If you wait longer than that, you will have to do your schooling over again, so don't wait that long. On the exam itself, there's a total of 135 questions. There's 100 on the national portion, 30 on the state, and then 5 questions that are trial questions for future versions of the exam, and those are not graded. To pass, you need a 70% on both sections. It is possible to pass one portion and not the other. It's actually very common for people to pass one part and not the other. I would say about 50-50 people who pass the first time and people who need to retake it. You're going to have 3.5 hours to finish the whole test. So that should be plenty of time. And when you go in to sit down at your little cubicle area, they are going to give you scratch paper and like a little golf pencil so you can work through math problems, take notes, or whatever you might need. On the day of the exam itself, when you're scheduling your exam, keep in mind what else might be going on that day that you choose. They will test Monday through Saturday. There is no testing on Sundays. And try to pick a day where you don't have something else going on, like maybe not a half day at work, or your sister's not getting married that afternoon or whatever that looks like. Try to pick a day where that can be your focus. If you have kids, ship them off to your moms, whatever you need to kind of give yourself that breathing room and not stress more than you need to. When you show up, you're going to need 2 forms of ID, your driver's license or whatever with your picture on it, and then something with your signature. If the name on your driver's license and the other piece of ID does not perfectly match the name that you're testing under, you're going to struggle because they expect them to be exactly the same. If they are not the same, then you'll need to bring something explaining why.
So if we're missing like my middle name on one ID.
Oh, middle name you'll be fine, but like your first and last name. Or are you testing as your middle name, last name, or?
I'm not sure. Oh, I will probably,
um,
oh, you mean like, no, it'll be my first name.
okay, yeah, then you'll be fine.
Okay.
The only thing you can bring into the room is a super basic calculator, kind of like a dollar store calculator, nothing that's programmable or they won't let it in. If you come in wearing like a hoodie or like a lot of layers, they will ask you to pare down. So, dress accordingly, plan to wear something that you'll be warm in, but not hot in. Just think ahead. And then they will take everything you own away from you. So I wouldn't wear like a hat, a watch, all that stuff. Travel light because they will take everything away from you and they will secure it in a locker. They'll get it back. But they're very, very hyper sensitive to testing information getting out. So they want to make sure that that doesn't escape the room. And then just some basics, make sure you get a good night's sleep, make sure you know where you're going, be early. If you are even a minute late, they don't have to let you in. They start, like if there's 6 people testing at 9 o'clock, everybody starts at the exact same second. So you want to make sure you're there and early. And yeah, plan for traffic, plan for car accidents, plan for, to have gas, all of that, because that's such a letdown if you're late and then you have to reschedule. A couple of tips and tricks for passing. I won't touch on every single one of these, but the best tip that I give anybody and everybody is slow down. Take your time on the exam, take a deep breath and very carefully read the question. So when you get your screen comes up and you have a question, read the question, read all 4 answers, go back and read the question again, and then through a process of elimination, choose your answer. And I say this for a few different reasons. One, when you're going through the practice test, there may be questions from the from the practice quizzes on the actual exam. And they probably won't be the same exact questions. They're going to modify them just a little bit. But if you're kind of, flying through it, you're skimming the question or just quickly reading the question, and you're looking for the answer, like that word is associated with that word, and you click that, you're probably going to get it wrong. And the reason is they do change those questions a little bit. And the second reason I say to carefully read that is because a lot of these questions have more than one right answer. And if you're not doing a process of elimination, you might miss that. And then it'll be harder to weigh those 2 options against each other if you just pick one. So the reason they do that is oftentimes, there is more than one right answer. There's more than one way to gut a fish. So they will put those scenarios in there because you're going to experience that in your career all the time. You're going to have to use your judgment and your understanding of the concepts to apply them in the right situations. So I cannot stress enough. Read the question, read all 4 answers, read the question one more time because I don't know about you, but I'm a fast reader, but I'm not the most efficient when I go fast. So read it again to make sure you didn't miss anything. The questions oftentimes, not oftentimes give you clues, but sometimes they do, or sometimes they give you more information than you need to intentionally confuse you. And so you need to slow down and catch that stuff because I think a lot of people fail for that exact reason. They're just going too fast. They don't read the questions. They don't read the answers. They just jump to an answer. When you're going through your process of elimination, when you are really stuck, you have no idea which one is the right one. Oftentimes, the longest answer is usually the right one. Not the longest of the 4, but the longest of the 2. So again, that process of elimination. Um, and then if you come across a question that you're kind of sitting there for a couple minutes thinking it through, skip it. Don't spend too much time trying to work through a question. Unless it's math, it might take a minute. But anything else, when you skip it, it will flag it so you can easily come back to it later. Just be sure to not review every single one of your answers. If you change them, chances are good you're going to change them to something that was wrong.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You said that there might be multiple right answers. Are there questions that have multiple answers, and will they state that?
Nope. Every single question only has one right answer.
Perfect.
You just have to pick the most right.
Got it.
So I kind of want to take this slide out. And the reason for that is I have a lot of this listed here. So for the math portion of the exam, there are going to be 10 math questions on the test. So you can kind of count on that being 10% of the whole exam. And I'm going to give you a breakdown of all of this in a second. But because of that, these things listed here, maybe take a picture or a screenshot. If you don't have these formulas and these conversions memorized, you're really going to struggle with the math portion. Yeah, you'll use probably every single one of these on a question. So I would definitely make sure that you have those tucked away in your memory. The other thing that I learned from someone who came to test prep actually, do you both know how many days are in every month or know how to figure that out? Yeah? Okay. Perfect. Then we won't worry about it. And this slide, so I have a packet that I'll upload in a minute. We'll talk about that as well. But I want to touch on this. The Department of Licensing is a mess. It is a mess. Given everything that has happened in our world in the last year, the state has had to cut back on the amount of staff that they have, which has in turn really slowed down the licensing process. There are things you can do to speed that up. The biggest thing is getting your fingerprints done. I would do them now, honestly. It is the DOL said yesterday, and this isn't true yet, maybe it's coming and they're warning us, that they are 50 days behind processing fingerprints. There is one person in the state of Washington that is processing fingerprints, not just for real estate, but for all industries that require fingerprints. And it's a manual process. They can't do it automatically or they don't have it set up that way. So if you go to identigo.com, you can register on there. You're going to go into a place, they'll do digital fingerprints. The DOL does not take printed fingerprints. This is your only choice. You have to do it through here. The cost is about $43. You'll pay that at the time of scheduling. And it's super quick. You're in and out. If you hear nothing about your fingerprints, that's good. If you don't want to hear anything. And then once you pass your exam, you're going to get, there's a few things that I skipped over. So when you test, when you're done with your exam, they're going to give you one sheet of paper. And on that sheet of paper, it's going to tell you if you pass or failed each section. If you pass both of them, it's just going to say pass. There won't be a score. You'll want to hold on to that piece of paper. And then if you don't pass, or if you don't pass one section, they will give you your scores so you can see where you can improve and what you need to study more next time. And we'll go through what that looks like. So for PSI to communicate to the DOL that you did pass, they say it takes 3 days. Right now it takes about a week. So just some things to keep in mind in our office. When people join, we can get them into the MLS and start taking classes and stuff the day they pass. So it's not like you're completely held back from being able to dive in. You just aren't able to market yourself or tell anybody that you're an agent until you actually have your license through the Department of Licensing. So schedule these like tonight. Okay, so this is probably the most useful thing I'm going to give you tonight. This is a breakdown of all of the topics on the national portion of the exam and how many questions there are per topic, and then the same breakdown for the state portion and how many questions there are per topic. So on the national, so over here, hold on. So between contracts all the way down to financing, these top 5, these are 63% of your score. Huge. If you're going to spend time studying anything, start from the top and work your way down. Some of this stuff down here, it doesn't matter if like, so on the testing results, like I said, if you pass, you don't see your score. If you fail, you do. So then you can improve. And you know, when people don't pass, I ask them to send me their scores so I can go through them and help them prioritize what they need to be studying. And oftentimes people will look at that and be like, oh wow, I got 100% property management. Well, that's 3 questions. That doesn't get you anywhere. You know, you need 100% in contracts and principles of agency, you know, so be intentional about your studying. Don't waste your time on the aggregate down here, you know, focus on the boulders. That's what's going to get you through it. Same with the Washington State portion. I have a breakdown of what falls under each one of these categories that we'll go through now. I do not have this slide in the packet that I'm going to share. I'm going to be updating that. I just haven't had a spare moment. So if you need like a screenshot or a picture of this, go right ahead. I recommend it because it just makes it really easy for you. So give me just a moment to get this packet. So I'm going to add this to the chat as a link, just in case either one of you are on your phones and can't access the PDF. Okay. So I'm going to pull this up as well so we can walk through a little bit of this together, because this is going to be your study guide. So in this packet, can you guys see my screen okay? Okay. So in here, oh my gosh, come on, there we go. On this second page, so the information on the slide that I just showed you, as well as these next few pages we'll go through together, I got this from PSI. If you go onto their website, they just have this as part of a publication, but it's buried in the back of like a 26-page handbook that's full of nothing that you need. So most people don't even know it's there. It took me about a year of doing this before I found this. So this is the same breakdown that we just looked at. They're just not in order of priority. If you don't pass the first time and you get that printout showing what to improve on, it's going to look just like this, but these will be percentages instead of the number of questions. So that's why I just had them prioritized. Down here, this covers the 30 questions that are on the state exam. So this little half piece of paper is your state study guide with 13 questions under the Washington statutes and rules. This tells you exactly what is included in those 13 questions. What do you need to study? What do you need to know? So if it were me, and I'm like, okay, tonight I'm going to study state. That's all I'm going to do. I would start here, managing broker relationships with affiliated licensees. Make sure I understand that, and then move on to B, then C, and just kind of move through methodically, making sure that you understand these concepts. Then I come over here to licensing requirements because it has 8 questions, and do the same thing, step by step, make sure that you understand all of these. And then on the next page and the page after that, I have a detailed outline for the national portion. So I'm going to buzz to this next page and go to contracts because that is the largest portion of the test. Oh dear. Okay. So over here is the breakdown for contracts. In parentheses, it doesn't just say 17 questions. It has it broken down by recall and recognition, as well as application and analysis. So 7 questions are going to be like vocabulary questions. You know, what they may give you the definition. If blah, 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 what is this called? And you have to pick the right term. And then 10 questions are application and analysis, which may take, let's say, the concept of, I don't know why I'm trying to think when I can just look here. What, acceptable, I don't know. Okay. If you write an offer and the listing agent comes back to you requesting a different price, what would happen to the original contract? Would it be terminated? Is it still alive? Things like that. Like, not just understanding what the definition counteroffer means, but understanding how it actually plays out in the grand scheme of a real estate transaction. So you're using your judgment, you're using, it's just a different part of your brain, like actually understanding the concept versus being able to tell me what the word means. Does that make sense? So then, I would just go through here step by step, 10 questions on these 10 topics. There may be, 5 of these topics that are actually on the test and they have 2 questions each. There's no like rhythm to it. You kind of just have to go through it all. But then something like contract clauses, amendments, addenda, there's only 1 question. I may not hurt myself over that 1 question. I may instead spend that time making sure I understand the purchase sale agreement and the terms of that. So I do recommend using this to your advantage. This really helps you hone in on what matters and ignore the stuff that doesn't. And then you kind of have that confidence that you're not missing anything because this is from the company that writes the test. In here, I have some tips and tricks for passing. This was pointed out to me earlier. I have not updated this. It said that you get 3 blue sheets if you pass. It's not 3 anymore. It's just the 1. So there's only 1 sheet, whether you pass or fail. That has changed. On this page, up here at the top, I have a little spreadsheet that I started but intentionally didn't finish. So I get a fair amount of questions on the different loan types and how to kind of differentiate between them. And whenever you're learning the different types of deeds or the different types of loans, different types of appraisals, like there may be, different types. For me, I look at that like I'm buying a computer. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I have a general idea, but I pick out like 2 or 3 that I like and I do that compare thing so I can look, across at the memory and, the screen size, like those things that matter. And that's what this is, picking out the things that matter and make them different from each other. So I recommend like going in, finishing this, and then that will help you compare and contrast those three main loan types. And then over here, I had trouble with this in school, and I think a fair amount of people do as well, is all of the ors and the es that you're learning in fundamentals. So I thought of them as givers and takers. That just worked better for my brain. So, like the lessor, the offeror, the vendor, those are the people offering the property or selling, renting, they're giving. And then the other people are the takers, the buyers, the renters, real simplified, but I found it helpful. And then the only one that's different is mortgagee and mortgagor. Those are flipped. So just kind of seeing that information simplified so much sometimes helps. Down here, a little bit more of those math formulas and conversions to memorize. And then I have some advice from people who have passed the test in our office. I need to update this. I think I have some new ones. I just need to update this packet. But the most important thing is that study guide, and that will all still be correct. Additional resources. JT, did you go to Rockwell, or are you in Rockwell?
I'm in CE.
Okay. So the reason I asked, Rockwell has this, oh man, this book, The Insider's Guide to Passing the Washington State Real Estate Exam. You don't need it. CE Shop might have one similar to this. This is what I use when I do the class. We do have some in our office that you can check out if you wanted to borrow one, if you felt like you needed additional studies resources. We do have a Facebook group just for test prep. We post practice questions in there, the upcoming test preps, and then you're able to kind of ask each other questions. People post when they pass, or, oh, I didn't pass, or I'm having troubles with this. So it's just kind of a community of about 140 people who are in school in the state. And also a great way to start networking because some of those agents live in Spokane or Vancouver. They're not just Seattle area agents or future agents. And then Quizlet is a great app for flashcards. They have a website and they have an app so you can have those flashcards on the go. They're already pre-made. And then Prep Agent on YouTube is free videos of a guy just talking about this, the material in plain language. A lot of people really love it. I can't recommend it enough, especially since it is a free resource. They do have a paid option, but I don't encourage anybody to spend any more money than you have to. Neither is Keller Williams. We are always talking about leading with revenue. So if you don't have to spend it, don't spend it. If you feel like you're struggling, there are more resources available that do have some cost, but not as much as like school or anything. And then all my contact information is on the back of this packet as well, so you can reach out. So we have about 20 minutes left. Usually what I like to do with the rest of our time is talk about anything you need. If there's a specific topic that you struggled with or that just doesn't make sense, I'll talk it through, kind of give you real life examples. So do either one of you have anything that you were hoping to maybe understand better at the end of this? Or any questions from anything that I covered? Is there anything I missed or something you were hoping that I would share that I didn't?
I guess I have a question.
Okay.
So let's say I think I saw this question before where it goes, there are multiple offers. So the first person, like, I want to offer this, second person goes, well, I want to offer this X amount and it's even more. what's like the best response? And the options were like, wait until you exhaust every option for the first person, or just reject the first one and just take the second.
So has the first offer been accepted in this scenario?
Yeah, let's say if it did get accepted.
So once an offer is accepted, that property is no longer available to buy. Let's, like, for example, Joseph, if you owned a home and you had it on the market for $800,000 and JT wrote an offer and you accepted it. And then the next day I came in, none of us are agents. We could just all be people in this. The next day, I wrote you an offer for $900,000, and you're like, "Oh man, I really want that offer." You already sold the house; it's no longer available. So, the only way for a seller to get out of an offer that they've already accepted is if the buyer has a contingency in place that well, actually, so this wouldn't be in the test. This wouldn't be on the exam. But like some sellers will play hardball if there's an inspection addendum and the buyer asks for this, and that to be done. The seller can be like, nope, and kind of almost hope the buyer walks away so that then they can take that other offer. But once there's pen to paper and once that signed around offer has been delivered to the other agent, it's a done deal. Too bad, so sad. Now, well, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. How about if I
can't
guess
hear
if it's not? How about now?
Nope. Oh, I think you lost service.
Straight unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Let's just say if it's not accepted, then
Yeah, so that would just be like a normal offer process. You'll put you put the home on the market, and let's say, okay, so I put a home on the market and I listed it today at noon, and I get an offer at 2 o'clock, I get one at 4 o'clock, I get one at 7 o'clock. The only thing that dictates how quickly I have to accept that offer is whatever expiration date the buyer's agent put on the contract. So let's say that 2 o'clock offer has an expiration date of today at 9 p.m. If I don't respond to that offer by today at 9 p.m., that offer doesn't exist anymore. The buyer has the option to extend their offer if they wanted to, but at 9 p.m. it's dead. So if I miss the boat on that 9 p.m. offer, then my only other offers are the two other that came on the table. Now, you won't be tested on this part, but particularly in this market where it is 100% a seller's market and you can leverage one offer against the other to raise that purchase price, that's what you would do is, oh, I've got two offers. This one's at $750, this one's at $760. Hey, $750, will you go up to $770 to beat $760? So you're doing your job and getting your seller the most money possible from a ready, willing, and able buyer. So until there's pen to paper, that offer has been accepted, signed around by the sellers, and delivered to the other agent, both of those have to happen, then there's no reason why you couldn't take a different one. Or same scenario, that 2 p.m. offer, my client signs it at 3 o'clock, but they're like, don't send it back until, I don't know, 8:30, because we want to see what else comes in case we get another offer. So I meet with my sellers, they sign all the paperwork, but I have not told, well, it doesn't even matter. I haven't sent that contract to the buyer's agent yet. When another offer comes in at 5 and another one at 7, my my sellers can sign one of those other ones. And yeah, they've signed 2 contracts, but I would only deliver one. So it's the delivery that matters. Because you could get a contract signed, it could sit in your email overnight. If you didn't deliver it, it's expired. So that's where that whole like time is of the essence comes in. So yeah, that was a really long, convoluted answer, but does that answer your question?
That will do.
Okay. You guys have any other questions or concerns or struggles? Not a thing. Wow, you're making it easy on me. Well, let me see if I can find something to cover. So I'll jump up to the financing section. Okay. So can you guys see that okay here on the right? Okay. So basic concepts and terminology. Points, this is referring to discount points. When a buyer gets a mortgage, they are quoted an interest rate. If they don't like that interest rate, they want it a little bit lower, they have the option to buy down their rate. When they do that, they're shaving off usually in increments of a tenth of a cent or tenth of a percentage, lowering that rate. This makes sense if somebody's planning to live in the property long term. Maybe they're planning, they're going to live there for the full 30 or 15 years of the loan, and they want to pay less interest over the life of the loan, and they don't mind paying a little more up front in order to save in the long run. So 1 discount point equals 1% of the loan amount, not the purchase price. A lot of people get that confused. And if you calculate it incorrectly on the exam, the answer for calculating it off of the purchase price will be there every time. So you won't know if you got it wrong because you're like, oh, the answer's there. I probably got it right. So 1% of the loan amount. And that reduces it by a tenth of a percentage. So if the rate quoted is 3.25, they buy it down a point, it's going to go down to 3.24%. LTV is the loan to value ratio. That is how much down payment a buyer is putting down in relationship to the amount of the principal of the loan, the principal being whatever their original loan amount is. So if it's an 80-20 LTV, then 80% down, 80% financed, 20% down payment. That's all it's referring to. PMI is through FHA. Hold on, let me look. When you guys get in the business, you're going to have a lender friend who explains all of this to your client. You just have to know the basic differences between the loans and how to read through one of those good faith estimates that are mentioned in the text. So some of this you get a pass on, and then after you've been in the business for a minute, you start to forget it. So PMI is private mortgage insurance, and that is in place to protect the lender. Mortgage insurance is not there to protect the buyer. That is why they get homeowners insurance. The PMI is for when there is a low down payment amount, um, when you have a low down, when a buyer has a low down payment, they're generally considered a higher risk. They don't have as much cash on hand, and it kind of gives the lender the impression that there might potentially be an issue with paying their mortgage on time and in full in the future. So that PMI is put in place so that if the borrower were to ever default on the loan, the lender has the ability to be made whole in that situation and not be out any money. Everything in the process of obtaining a mortgage is done to protect the lender in case of default. That's why the appraisal is in place. That's why they go through such a rigorous underwriting process, digging through, I don't know, your bank records, your 401ks, going through your children's report cards, like everything, because they want to make sure that the borrower is a good risk. I think that it doesn't cover this in this portion, but the reason for that as well is when there is a loan with a low down payment, the high LTV, the lender is going to have a harder time selling that loan on the secondary market. And that is how banks become more liquid and are able to then loan to other people, is they have to sell those loans on the secondary market to free up that cash. So it all is kind of a domino effect. So the PMI is only on conventional loans, and that is usually when they have less than 20% of a down payment. 20% is typical on a conventional loan. On the flip side of that, there is MIP, Mortgage Insurance Plan, and that is through FHA. And it's the same concept, making sure that the lender is covered. The borrower does pay for this insurance in their monthly payments. And then they are able to, at some point, once that principal amount drops enough on their mortgage, they can usually request that insurance be waived or removed from their bill, because they've proved that they, have a strong history of paying their payments, paying it on time, and they've been paying down that principal. Interest, we all know interest, the cost of borrowing money. Yeah, it's pretty simple. PITI is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So these are the 4 things that make up the monthly mortgage payment. So you might have one math problem that asks you to figure all of this out. But yeah, so the P, obviously the principal for the actual cost of the home. Interest, taxes are the property taxes. Those are usually bundled into a mortgage and paid, well, the money is paid into an account, and then the mortgage company pays your property taxes for you. And then insurance is not homeowners insurance, that is that mortgage insurance. And then a financing instrument. So they go through, let me make sure this is the right section. Give me one moment. I don't want to get off in the weeds on the wrong thing. Okay. All right, so this is talking about oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on what it's called. I'm looking for it. There we go. Whether the states are a lien theory or title theory state. There we go. Oh my gosh. I could see the words in my head and I couldn't think of them. So in some states, when you sign a mortgage, sometimes in some states, that is the instrument that changes title. So that is what puts the property from the seller's name into the buyer's name. Not in Washington, but in some other states. The difference between the mortgage doing that or the deed of trust is how the foreclosure process plays out if that happens. So with the deed of trust, usually there is a third party involved. In Washington state, that's usually a title company. They don't really have a horse in the race. They don't care. They just want to make sure everything's done right and legally. And in Washington state, that is what transfers title. We have a separate document that documents or that puts the mortgage into writing. But for the deed of trust, that explains how the foreclosure process happens. It's definitely easier than a lien or oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Than the mortgage process of foreclosure. Basically, when the deed of trust is signed, that is what can be also used to convey title back to the lender. So it just makes it simpler for the state. It makes it simpler for the bank to regain possession of that property. So oftentimes you'll hear things like note and deed of trust, terms like that for when properties go into foreclosure and end up on the courthouse steps and kind of goes through that whole process. It's definitely easier. So the lien theory means that the deed of trust creates a lien on the property. So when the seller, sells off the property, the lien is satisfied before the seller gets a dime. So it ensures that whomever has a debt owed to them secured against the property will get paid. So this is oftentimes always done with a mortgage. That's always the first lien. Most people buy a property with a lien in place right away, which is their mortgage. If you don't pay a contractor, they can put a lien against your property. There's a few different entities that can put those liens against your home. The title theory states that is, as I mentioned, the mortgage will convey title to the lender. So it's just a slightly different process. And then the promissory note, that is what is used to indicate a debt. So that's a written evidence of a debt. That could be earnest money at the beginning of a transaction, or it could be the entitled mortgage amount that is due to the lender. So this can be used in a few different ways. There's very specific information that needs to be on a promissory note in order for it to be valid. They list those out as far as like what the loan balance is, when that full balance is due, the name of the borrower, the name of the lender, the interest rate, if it's fixed, if it's variable. But you do not put a legal description on the property or on the promissory note because the promissory note is between two people, not necessarily involving that specific property. The debt would be owed either way. So looks like Joseph bounced and he wanted to talk about that.
I have one question that I just got up.
Yes.
If the seller can only get 5% of earnest money for basically, I guess, the earnest money deposit,
Yeah.
why would a buyer need to put more forward than that?
So for the earnest money, the reason people will put more down is because it makes them appear to be more serious about the property. And honestly, most people don't know that they can only keep 5% of it. Most people don't educate their clients about that. And I mean, it just looks better. Like if you write an offer and your offer is identical to another agent's, but your client is willing to put down $50,000 of earnest money and that one's only willing to put 10, it makes your offer look better. Like it makes them look like, okay, well, they're a bit more financially stable. They have more money. They may be able to close faster. And yeah, those are preconceived notions. You hope that the pre-approval letter would dictate that, or the lender would share that with you. But it just looks better. It's a strategy to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, theoretically, you could put down your deposit as your earnest money.
A
But
lot of people do.
yeah.
And in this market right now, I don't know if you've heard, but Seattle area has never seen a market like this. It is absolutely insane. There's not enough properties on the market. So it's not uncommon for homes to sell for $100,000, $200,000 over asking. One in our office, I don't know if they represented the buyer or the seller. I can't remember, but it went for $1 million more than asking. And it was like a $3.5 million property. And it's like, usually when you get up into that price range, it's not as competitive. Not that many people can afford those houses, even around here. There's a limited buyer pool, but it's just unbelievable. And then you get people who write their offers with non-refundable earnest money, which
Jeez.
is danger, Will Robinson. Like if for any reason that offer falls apart, if they lost their job, if they suddenly got relocated, you're out that money. You're never going to see it again. That 5% rule goes out the window because you signed off that it's non-refundable. So, yeah, people are doing crazy things to get into houses right now. I would not buy right now. I wouldn't tell any of my clients that, but yeah, it's insane. So this was a couple weeks ago. I don't know what the situation is now, but if every single house on the market in the Seattle area sold and no more listings came on, we would be completely out of properties in 18 days. And a balanced market is 6 months. It's crazy. So yeah, never seen such a thing, never heard of such a thing. And it's like this all over the country. So I don't know when it'll change, but there's a lot of agents having conversations about risk tolerance with their buyers and how much they're willing to forego in order to win. There's people who are like, no inspection, no title contingency, no financing contingency. So it's like literally if anything went sideways, they're buying that house. Or they're out the earnest money at the least. So
Yeah. It's like,
it
where are
is.
you getting this money? Where are you guys getting
Tech, man. These people who come to the area and they get these jobs at like Google and Amazon, and they start making 125,000, 150 a year, and then they're married to somebody who does the same thing. Boom, all
Yeah.
of that money. Yeah, that's why it's so expensive in like Redmond and Kirkland. It's crazy, but that won't be on the test. That's just a side note. All right. Do you have any other questions or anything else I can help you with before we go?
No, I think that was it. I mean, the information in the beginning definitely was very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm
stuff.
glad. Yeah, if you need anything, have any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to do whatever I can to help. Just let me know.
Awesome.